Welcome to the webinar. I'm Deborah Gallant. I am with Entrepreneurs Forever. This program is called Forever Forward. It's a monthly program with some foundational information and education that we think all of our small business owners can use. Today, I have imported a presenter from the West Coast, Dionne. I think you came referred from a Pittsburgh contact, Shannon. So.
Yes.
Our organization is mostly East Coast based, but we have people everywhere. So we're going to do some short introductions. I'm going to just tell you about some upcoming programs because I think they're so important and I never remember to come back at the end and do them. Then I'm going to hand it off to Dionne. So I'm going to actually, in the interest of time, because we started a few minutes late, is actually ask you to type in the chat what kind of business you're in. So Dionne will have that sort of information and we'll get she'll know, that we have a mobile nail salon, that we have a coach, that we have a tech consultant, because honestly, the sales process for different businesses is different depending on what it is you're selling, how much it costs, what that process looks like. And I bet that will help her inform her talk to you. And I will say that if you have questions as we go on, especially after I pass presenter role over to her, you can type them in the chat and then I'll be the voice of the audience for the most part so that we can really be efficient, but we'll leave some time at the end for her to answer your questions. So in case you got here and you're not sure who we are, Entrepreneurs Forever is about empowering small businesses to create thriving businesses that sustain their families and support their communities. We do that mostly with peer groups. If you are not a member and you want to learn more about it, you can by going to one of our online sessions. We do these learning programs twice a month. The next deep dive is about hiring your first employee. And that can be a pretty daunting thing to go from solo to more than one. And we'll have an HR expert to talk about that. But we'll also talk about sort of the mental leap you need to make to do that, because it's more than just, oh, I'm going to hire somebody. You got to get ready for it. And then we're going to talk about content creation next month in the Forever Forward. Now, if you are a member of Entrepreneurs Forever, and I recognize several of you who are, we are having a once ever, the first that we've ever done, speed networking virtually for you to meet people across all 40 of our Entrepreneurs Forever groups. You need to sign yourself up. We're going to create a little directory and we're going to try to match you with people who can help you move your own business forward. So I just like to take a moment to mention that. Today's topic is one that really builds on what we've been doing in the last 2 months about who's my ideal client and finding my ideal client. Well, you can find them, but can you sell to them? And that's where Dionne and I have come up with this topic for you. She actually had so many topics, and maybe we'll have her back for another one. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a moment, but today's talk is about creating a replicable sales process. And one of the folks in one of my groups said, oh, how do you manage your sales? Oh, it's those sticky notes. Oh, today I should call Jim. Tomorrow I should call Jane. It's like, that's not a process, people. So I'm going to stop sharing. And hopefully Dionne has had a chance to read some of who you are. She'll introduce herself, do her presentation. And I also want to mention there is a handout. And what I did, Dionne, last night, she sent me 5 handouts. I've consolidated them into one PDF, so I can stick that PDF in the chat in a moment once she gets started. And you'll all have that. We also will share the recording and the full deck with you either later today or tomorrow. So without further ado, Dionne, you're up.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning. I hope you're doing fantastic. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to go from there. So bear with me. You're going to see a whole bunch of stuff that probably nobody wants to see, including myself. So that's okay. How's everybody doing? It's Friday. We're in Q2. How's it going? Are you loving where you're at right now? Or you're like, oh man, I wish I could go back to January and do a redo. And that's okay.
All right, I'm gonna
little of both.
I'm gonna drop this into the chat, and I'm gonna also read who's here because I'm excited to find out. So Dionne, you're up.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. So I'm Dionne Mejer. I've been in sales and tech for 25 years and love everything about what we do, talking about sales, serving the frontline folks, working with managers, working with leaders. Love everything about it. Love talking about sales because quite frankly, I get stuck just as much as anybody else. And so a lot of the things we're going to talk about today are things that I have to remind myself to do as well. So I went to market as Inside Sales by Design probably 9 years ago. We rebranded to Revenue by Design simply to keep up with the times. And things are very different now than they were even 7 years ago, right? So we're going to talk about creating a sustainable sales process. You're seeing a QR code for those of you that are multitasking, which is all of us in 2020. Go ahead and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to join with you. And a lot of what I'm going to share with you is the accumulation of 25 plus years, not only just in life in general, right? So a lot of what we do nowadays crosses over. I have written a book called The Stepped Approach. A lot of what we're going to be talking about, I'm taking from the books that are in the appendix of that book itself. So citing all those references, again, accumulation of a whole bunch of knowledge over the course of 25 years. And I'm sure a lot of people here can attest to that. So what we start here with at Revenue by Design is always about purpose. We always talk about why. Why do we want to do something? Because that helps us stay anchored and not scurry off chasing the bright, shiny objects, which is always hard, especially nowadays, right? So we always think about purpose. Why? Why do we want to create a sustainable sales process? Why? What is our purpose for that? And thinking about that, I want you to think through why you want this. Why are you in this group? Why did you go out on your own? Why do you have your own business? And we want to think about this purpose because it gives us these 5 things. We get clarity on what the heck we're doing and why we're doing it. And it gives us the courage and confidence to go and talk to people. We think about scalability. So Deborah was saying we all have sticky notes. I have paper everywhere. And in order to stay focused though, I also put time on my calendar every day to go through and put my notes into the system I have. Because again, then it gives us repeatability. If we are looking to scale and or maintain momentum for ourselves, of course, there's always revenue. Revenue is a result. We don't always want to anchor on that, but let's be honest, we have bills to pay and investments and obligations to make. So without revenue, things don't really happen. And also, last but not least, is our customers need what we have. We went to market for a reason, and we need to make sure we're staying anchored on our purpose and going from there. So the question I have for you is on a scale of 1 to 10, and all of you can do this, how effective would you rate your current sales process? Is your current sales process, whatever it may be, getting you to where you want to go? And on that scale of 1 to 10, put that in the chat. And even if you're pre-going to market, are you having the conversations that you need to
A
be having?
0.5, no, a 6, a 3.
Yeah, and that's okay. You're not alone. Okay, so what helps us stay on the path is purpose. Because without purpose defined, abuse is inevitable. So I'm pretty sure in talking with Deborah, a lot of you and ourselves included, myself included, we've gone through our mission statement creation. For us at Revenue by Design, we talk with people about purpose. And we talk about how do you know you're successful? You do it. And getting really clear on that. And it's hard. It is a hard exercise to do. But our purpose also sustains us. My purpose is to make the world a better place, one sales team at a time. And I know I'm successful when teams make their numbers, people have clarity, and they're happier and healthier. I'm still working on mine. So the question I have for you is, how well defined is your purpose statement and how well is it serving you? So now let's dive in a little bit. We all only have the same amount of time. It is the great equalizer out there. So again, on a scale of 1 to 10, how effectively are you using your time? Because our achievements are the cumulative efforts of our days. So by Friday at 5 o'clock, everybody loves that statement. You're going to put your head down on your pillow at some point tonight. Are you going to say, man, that was a job well done? Or are you going to say, holy bananas, there was a bunch of stuff I forgot I should have done and I should have prioritized it differently. Sales calls being one of them.
Well, some of these numbers are higher than the other ones. That's good.
That's good.
Oh, a few that are lower.
That's okay.
I know there's that quadrant that sometimes coaches use about the urgency
Yep.
and the importance, and it's
Yep.
so easy to get sucked into emergency room and, you know, triage rather than working on the strategic stuff.
It's hard, right? Especially for us in a startup. I've just hired my first virtual assistant, right? And I'm just now looking to expand because when I went to market, I didn't want to grow. It was about being a solopreneur and being here for my kids because they were little. That was my main focus. And I anchored that with my purpose. And so your reasoning for why you're going to market the way you're going to market, one is maybe different now than it is later or now versus when you first went. Doesn't matter what it is. All that matters is that you have that focus and that purpose. At the end of the day, it's because it will help us stay in our lane and be really good at what we're trying to do. Right? So where do we start with all of this? We start with the end in mind, meaning imagine a well-oiled revenue engine that has your annual plan. So you probably have all done your annual goal setting. You've rolled out achievable targets for yourself. And the question is, where do you want to be by the end of the year? So to Deborah's point, it's really hard to be in the minutia of every day and keep our strategic plan in the back of our head. And we're going to talk about how to kind of overcome some of that. But really think about visualizing. There's so much power in that visualization of if I do these things well, I can imagine a well-oiled revenue engine existing within my business. How many of you would like that? Because that's what we're talking about today. That our daily efforts roll into meeting our weekly efforts, our monthly efforts, our quarterly efforts, and then our annual efforts. So when we think about what we need to get there, we think about, I think of it as ingredients. So in the book I wrote called The Stepped Approach, I first start with, it's like baking a cake. We always need the right ingredients in the right doses at the end of the day. Because if you try to make a cake and you add too much baking soda, which I've done because I mixed up the baking soda and the baking powder measurements, it tastes awful. But we also don't know these things unless we make these mistakes. So to Deborah's point, it sounds like everybody's gone through, we know who we're calling, we know why we're calling them, we kind of know what to say to them at the point they are in their journey. We confidently know what to say when they say yes. Sometimes that stops us. We confidently know what to say when they say no. And we have an effective pipeline management strategy in place. So the question I have for everybody today is, how are you doing on your ingredients? On a
Do they
scale,
have to be documented to feel like you've got this nailed? I mean, if you haven't written it down, is that step one?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. People ask me all the time, everybody, like, Dionne, should I have a script for my sales team? How much documentation should I have? And the answer is yes. Because I haven't seen any research yet from the whole digital to remembering, but when we write something down with pen and paper, number one, it doesn't need Wi-Fi or batteries, so you will always have it. Number two, there's a direct correlation, and there's a ton of research out there that says when we write something down, we remember it better. So I have yet to write an annual plan for myself where I haven't achieved my goals.
A couple people said this should be a template, which is pretty interesting, but remember, we're sending you the deck. Turn it into
Yes.
one.
Yeah, you can absolutely turn the deck into a template for yourself. Absolutely. So how confident do you feel? Because sometimes what we get tripped up on is we get nervous about going to market. And so we spend time working on our value prop. We spend time working on maybe what we would say to people. And then they say yes. And we go, oh crap, they just said yes. I don't know what to do. So how many of you is that?
That can happen.
We've all been there, right? And especially as a founder. So it kind of goes back to that visualizing exercise we talked about. And I have a lot of caffeine flowing through my system right now. So, but when we think about going to market, when we think about our well-oiled revenue engine, there's so much power in visualizing people saying yes. And then when? And so having that customer onboarding process, right? That's a really, really official term. But being able to say, oh my gosh, thank you. We're so excited to have you as a customer. Here's what we're going to do next. Here's the 3 things that are going to happen. And you have that process documented because now your customer feels confident that you are welcoming them with open arms.
Dionne, let me just pause here. I know one of my groups, because I also facilitate one of our groups, talked this week about customer relationship management, CRM software.
Yep.
And I have an upcoming webinar where we're going to talk about that. But honestly, a CRM is only as good as the process behind it. You still
100%.
need to start with, what do I want to have happen and in
Yes.
what order,
Yep.
so that the software can take it from there. It doesn't
100%.
replace making these decisions.
No, a CRM system is exactly that, right? It's like having a refrigerator. Your refrigerator isn't going to plan your menu or cook your food for you, right? So your CRM system manages what you're doing already. So yes, that's a really excellent point. It won't do it for us. A lot of CRM systems now have the automated workflows in them and all that jazz, which is fantastic. It doesn't beat conversation.
And you don't necessarily need a CRM, and that's one of the things we'll talk about in it. But first, you have to know what process you want to use.
Yep. Absolutely. So thinking about it from where is your customer at and where are you at? So are they there? And there's really only 3 things people can say when you call them or reach out to them: yes, no, or maybe. And so if they say yes, we should know what to do. If they say no, we should know what to do and ask a question. And if they say maybe, what do we do to kind of get them off that ambiguous seat? And so to Deborah's point, it's always a process, and it's not necessarily about us. When we think about and get out of our own way with all of this, a lot of it becomes clear. Right. And so, because what stops us is us. What stops us is, I don't know what to do, the lack of clarity. And so we want to think about shifting our mindset from, oh, I have to make phone calls today, or I have to have a process, or I have to I get to go talk to people about how driving clarity will help them have more engaged employees and increase their revenue. I get to talk about the service that people need. And so we want to make those decisions from an other-centered perspective. People want to say yes. People want what you have. The mobile nail salon, hell freaking yeah, I would love that, because I don't leave my house. I'm constantly working. And you can probably hear our dog in the background because we're all off schedule today. So she's like, I don't understand what's happening right now. So I'm going to step away and let her out the front door. So just a minute. Right. So, or for those of you that have small children, I don't know what the heck happened to the school schedule, but for the love of God, I wish it was consistent. There's early out here and late start here. My daughter doesn't start school until 10:30 Monday and Friday. Are you serious right now? Right. So, but when we think about having that schedule, book out 20 minutes for yourself on Sunday and think about strategically what you need to have happen and plot it out. What needs to shift in your mindset to go from, I don't want to, yeah, I am super excited to do this, right? Because I would love a mobile nail salon here. There might be one, I don't know, right? Or some of the other services in there, general contractor as a female, no offense, guys, sometimes that whole male dominated industry is really hard sometimes for people when you're different from that, right? I'm not going to call out gender components to it, but I'll tell you, when we bought a house and we had it built and we were walking through after buying it, the GC wouldn't even look at me. Right now, maybe that person was uncomfortable. I don't know. But thinking about when we're creating our value props, like what is it that sets us apart from our competition, from our buyer's perspective?
You know, one of the things, Dionne, I've seen frequently is people have in their head that sales, and I'm going to use a common reference that I bet people know. You know that guy Ned in Groundhog Day who tries
Yeah.
to sell him insurance every
Yeah.
single day and he comes up and
Yeah.
shakes his hand? Like it feels icky and slimy and about them and not about the purchaser. But in fact, when
Yes.
you're selling something that's something you believe in, because it's
Yeah.
your business, you built it, it's either your service or your product. Sales is really just about finding people who really appreciate and value what you do. And it's
Mhm.
not Ned from Groundhog Day. And you need to get yourself out of this idea that it's an icky thing. It's just what you need to do to find the great people who appreciate and love you and want to pay you for what you do because they value
100%.
it. And
Yes.
getting yourself beyond that takes a while. But once you realize it's about something you care a lot about and know brings value, it doesn't feel slimy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a really great book. If anybody's ever read it, type in the chat that you have. It's called The Go-Giver. And they've written a couple of them. So there's the Go-Giver Leadership Style, Leadership Edition. And in that book, they call out the root word of sales is salar, which means to help. And so to Deborah's point, you know, people, there's always going to be somebody that wants to just lambaste you and just blow back at you. All right, you know what? That person's having a bad day. That's okay. Let them have a bad day. Then there's going to be people who are like, Dionne, please keep sending emails. These are amazing, right? Or please keep putting out content. We love what you're doing. You're always going to have the people that love what you do, and you're going to have the people that don't love what you do. And quite frankly, as humans, our brains are wired to remember negativity more than positivity.
Yeah, the
So
other thing I think that we forget is that sometimes it's not really a no, it's a not yet.
yes,
So this process is so important because Phil builds apps. Might not want to build an app today, but in 6 months or a year, if Phil has stayed top of mind, I'm going to be ready to make that call. And you can't take that as a no. That's a not yet. And that's pretty different.
yep, absolutely. And that's where we talk about people have the option to say yes, no, or maybe, right? And so one of the handouts you're going to get is the conversation tree. And with that is, what am I going to say first? And sometimes you might be building something and you're going to go and make a market research call, and you're going to call somebody and you're going to say, hey, Tara, this is Dionne over at whatever company I'm with. We're working on a few things. I'd love to get your insight on it. I know you're busy. Do you mind if I send you something? Sure. Sometimes that's all you got to do. But then you need that follow-up strategy. And then if you say, hey, if I send this to you, do you mind if I reach out to you in a couple weeks and see how it's going? How easy are we making it for people to say yes to us? And how easy are we making it for people to become a hand raiser and establish that relationship? Because relationships take time. And that's okay. And focusing on the people that say yes to us and want it, awesome, great. And people who say, no, you're good, great. Do you mind if I send you information? I know people get 300 emails a day today, but that's okay. Right? Just making it easy for everybody. So let's shift in from mindset, kind of getting into what we want maybe our day in the life to look like, because there's a flow between a rhythm and a routine. Here's what I mean by that. A routine is something we're going to do that gives us efficiency and expediency and all that good stuff. And quite frankly, when we're doing something new, we need a routine, right? Pretty sure everybody here, you probably got up, maybe took a shower, brush your teeth. If you're like me, you put contacts in, put some makeup on, all that good stuff. Chances are you've got a routine to get through your morning and a routine at the end of the night. Right? Anybody want to say yes? Give a testimony, right? You got the routine, helps you? Yeah. So now when you travel, you're probably out of your routine, but that routine helps you get into a rhythm. Because pretty sure when you travel, you still brush your teeth, right? You don't do the same routine you do at home, but you're in a rhythm, right? So that's where when we establish a new thing, like Deborah was saying, this is a habit we're developing. It takes 30 to 45 days to develop a new habit. Practice, practice, practice your routine. Because when then your business gets busy and you have to hire somebody, or you're going to put a CRM system in place, or maybe you need to add a service into your business, that routine will turn into a rhythm and it will save your hide. Resonate with everybody? Right? All right. Because really, what do we need? What do we need to be successful from this selling is helping motion? Starting at the top, we need activity. If people don't know who we are, we're just living in obscurity, right? So we need that activity. So my question for you is, have you set an activity metric for yourself? That's part of setting up our week for success.
Tell me what an activity metric is.
Yep. So thank you for that. How many calls do you have this week with friendly people? That's okay too. You can ask for referrals. Selling doesn't mean cold calling. Selling means you're going to generate revenue and you're going to find people to help, right? So an activity could be, I'm going to have 10 friendly phone calls. I'm going to find 10 key prospects and I'm going to do some outreach. I'm going to, activity could mean your marketing activity. If you're generating blogs or anything along those lines, it might be podcast appearances. What does that activity look like for you and how much of it do you need?
Yeah, and
And
let me
that's
just clarify for a moment, because I think one of the things that happens with small business owners is they say, "Oh, I'm shy. I'm just going to do passive, right? I'm gonna do social posts and I'm going to count how many likes." But those likes are not turning into sales unless you do something with them, right?
Correct. So that activity absolutely is all about that, right? What are you going to do with people that like you? So, because then now you have visibility. Fantastic. What do we do with it at the end of the day? We want to have that plan. So let's talk a little bit about then getting into that motion. So when you are doing a social post, and granted, right, it's easy to hide behind a screen. Go to a networking event. It's amazing what happens when we get out and we're in with people. It's amazing, right? And so thinking about what does that look like? So getting really tactical with our day, one is have your mindset, right? That believe that our sales is a non-negotiable. So we want to have our negotiables and non-negotiables. Again, sales doesn't mean cold outreach, right? It's all easy to say, I'm going to send an email or whatever the case may be, right? But making sure that we are making phone calls to net new people. They don't know who we are, because you're going to be surprised at how many people want to hear from you. Even following up with people that said yes and then don't take the action you want them to take. When you follow up with them and they do respond, 9 times out of 10, the answer is, oh my gosh, thank you so much for following up with me. I wanted what you have. We just weren't ready yet. So thank you for following up. And oh, by the way, the data hasn't changed in 20 some odd years. It still takes up to 20 touches before somebody responds. Up to 20.
Will people
So,
answer phone calls from people they don't know?
eventually. So what does that mean is, are they going to answer phone calls from people they don't know? No. They're going to wait for the voicemail to transcribe. They're going to look at their voicemail and then they're going to go from there. But that's where having a pattern of, if I call somebody, I might send them an email. I might connect with them on LinkedIn or Facebook. And then to what Deborah was saying is craft your template responses, because now you want to measure what works to get people engaged. So when somebody connects with you, for example, and I have my own messages as well. So when people connect with you, and you'll see those because I see people connecting with me, they connect with me. If on LinkedIn, I'll say, thank you so much for connecting with me. I really appreciate it. Please follow our LinkedIn company page for more information. And then a couple days later, I send them another note as far as we do a weekly call, a weekly show on LinkedIn Live called Rev Shots. We go live every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific. And I'll say, hey, make sure you're tuning into our show. And then I have another note as far as it seems like we've got people in common. Would you be open to a networking conversation? Because I'm genuinely curious what that person does. But what I just outlined was 4 templated notes that I send on LinkedIn.
And you had all of those contacts before the first call.
100%.
And the call, whether it's on the phone or Zoom or Google Meet or whatever,
Yep.
is now warmed up. And
Yep.
you haven't said it's a sales conversation, you've said a
Nope.
networking conversation.
100%. Because we're going to do our homework. We're going to do our pre-call planning, right? And so you can say, wow, you know what? We know a bunch of people curious about what you're doing. Even on Facebook, you can say, hey, we're part of the same groups, right? We just started a private Facebook group. We just started it. We're just growing it. So again, when people connect with me, it's, hey, we're a member of this group together. Would love to learn more about what you're doing. How about a networking call? Here's the link to my calendar. So type all those out, put them into your Google spreadsheet. I've got one too, right? And I just literally, every time I connect, I copy and paste it into that message and I send it. Now, where the phone calls come in, chances are people aren't going to take your call. If they do, fantastic. But if they don't, your voicemail serves as a way to convey your personality. So when you call and leave a voicemail, I'm super high energy. I love what I do, right? That's not for everyone. Some people it's a huge turnoff. I'm okay with that. But I want to imbue my sense of self into that voicemail. And I've had people go, wow, Dionne, I love your energy. That's the only reason I called you back. What is your superpower with your audience? And use that when you leave a voicemail, and your voicemail is a call to action for the note you just sent them. Whether it's on Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn messaging, an email directly, a text message, doesn't matter. Right? So I joined a networking group, and for me, when one of my revenue goals is to get in with some PE firms and do some training with their sales teams. And so I was able to connect with a gentleman on the East Coast, and again, followed this process, connected with him, said, hey, we're members of the same group, would love to set up a networking call. He responded back to me on LinkedIn and said, love it. Here's my email address. Let's continue the conversation. That was over the weekend. I sent him a note on Monday, didn't hear from him. Sent him a note on Tuesday, didn't hear from him. Went into his contact information on LinkedIn and his mobile number's listed there. Called him, left a voicemail saying, I know email is really hard right now. In the interest of being proactive, I'm going to send you a text message. Send him a text message. He responded because he wanted to set up a meeting. So I said, yep, we can meet on Friday. Does this time or this time work? Didn't hear from him, waited 24 hours, sent another message, waited 24 hours. And sure enough, yesterday or Wednesday, he responded to my text message and said, yep, that time works. I'll send an invite.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of work to have a call that
Yes.
might or might not lead to work.
100%. But that's where templatizing your approach, the routine, comes in very handy. Because we're not we're not looking at like cost of acquisition right now, right? And so for some of you, so for me and where I'm at, my deals are going to be a little bit bigger, right? In the B2B space. From a B to even a B2C component, or if you're working on smaller deals, having those messages ready to go, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, that whole trail of activity maybe took me 10 minutes. Maybe. I see nods. Tell me what you're
It doesn't take long once you have the system set up, but it feels like
it's taking
it feels really daunting.
It does, but you know what? Here's the thing: is knowing you need this system, because I've worked in tech for 25 years, right? In the whole agile methodology. When you send one message, use that as your template, copy and paste that into your spreadsheet. So say next week is your week to set up your templates, and you're going to reach out to somebody, and whatever message you type them and say, hey, great connecting with you, would love to set up a networking call, copy and paste that. That's message one into your spreadsheet. You don't have to create the system in a vacuum, and I would encourage you not to, because it feels weird. And here's why I say that. Again, people ask me all the time, they're like, Dionne, should I set up a script for my team? Sure, absolutely. Here's the thing about scripts. I love Star Wars. I'm a nerd. I'm a total nerd. Sci-fi, Star Trek, Star Wars, love all of it. When whatever the sixth one, or I lost track, unfortunately, right? Because it kind of lost my luster for me on the Star Wars front, but bear with me. J.J. Abrams was directing the movie, the seventh one that came out, right? Love the original cast. And in the extras, the bonus features of that movie, it shows J.J. Abrams with the original cast doing what is called a table read. And a table read in the business is literally the main characters sit down and they read the script word for word. And they go around and do a table read to get a feel for the script. It's not until take 9, right, that they're changing the script and they're changing tone and inflection and maybe a word here or there. So I say that to say, recognize why creating things in a vacuum isn't always fantastic. Number one. Number two, recognize that if you designate next week as the week you're going to create your sales system, do that as you're going. So you're connecting with somebody, type out your welcome message, include the link to your calendar, all that good stuff, copy and paste that into an Excel spreadsheet or wherever, whatever system you're using, and say, this is, Facebook or LinkedIn message number 1. It's that simple. And it'll take you.
So Dionne, yours is a complex sale at a high revenue point. Let's play with Seisu's mobile nail salon. So she gets a phone call. I guess that's probably a lead. Someone says, oh, she's in Cape Cod. Do you come to Provincetown? How can she create a process for a teeny little direct to consumer business like that?
Yeah. So I guess my question would be, if somebody's going to contact you, do you think they're ready to book with you right away?
I don't know if she can unmute and answer the question.
I don't know, but maybe put it in the chat, yes or no. Yeah, how do you deal with rejection at scale? Totally. Doreen, we can talk. I know, I thought it was 7. I know, I'm sorry. So I guess the question is, if you are in that business to consumer, right? People don't want a pen pal, they want a decision. So if I were the person texting you or emailing you, however you have your system set up that says, hey, do you come to so-and-so? I want to make a decision. So for some of the people that are looking in that role, my response would be, all of your emails should be, yes, we serve that. Here's our schedule. Here's a link to schedule with us. Schedule at will. Go.
So it's a shorter customer journey, but it's
100%.
all pre-formatted so that it's efficient for the person at the other end.
100%, right? I do not want to, I have to, yes. So if I was going to do that, that's exactly what I want, because the minute I'm going to take action with that, everybody's busy these days, especially ladies. No offense, guys. I don't know your world. I'm not a dude, right? But if people are reaching out to you for that, they want to make a decision and be done with it, because that lady is busy planning her day. Go.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions? That's a good question, Deborah. So part of this customer journey is putting yourselves in the shoes of your customer. And again, don't do that in a vacuum, ask.
All right, well, then let's go back to getting the presentation underway.
Does that help a little bit?
It did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, you'll have this presentation, whatever that day needs to look like for you, planning that out is super helpful. Right. And so, Steph, you were talking about, how do you deal with rejection at scale? We should talk about that, because that sucks. And that's really hard. So I would love a little bit more context around that. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, whatever platform you have, we can definitely talk about that. Rejection at scale is hard. But know that there's a nugget for you at the end, right? And part of my career, I ran a branch for a staffing firm when I lived up in Seattle, Washington. And we did outside sales, door to door, knocking, dropping off your business card, right? Like, hey, we do staffing for admin, call me if you need something. It was a 14-to-1 ratio, meaning for every 14 doors I knocked on, I got 1 job rec to fill. So how do you deal with it? Is get your numbers. Start with your numbers. What's your conversion ratio? Doesn't have to be hard. Like, just get a notebook and tick marks. And then what, if anything, could you do to maybe decrease that number? Right. I know it's hard. So the question is, just write down what you're doing, how you're doing it. And then the thing too, I don't know about you all, but again, I love what I do. put time against your activities, because if we don't, I always say that time, our activities are like fish and they grow to the size we give them. Right? Oh, Amy, yeah, that's a good call. Bastards, LinkedIn. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. All right, so put time against it. Yeah. From LinkedIn's recent moves to personalized notes. You know what? It's hard at the end of the day. If they have, so I would go to their contact info, and if they have their email there, I would send their note. I would send a note there. So for your rhythm, right? If you're going to connect with them on LinkedIn, then I would get their personal email. And again, to Deborah's point, depending on your sale, templatize that note as well for folks. So to kind of think about, skills that require time, and we're thinking about these things when you are sitting on, and whether it's Sunday night, if you all want to do that, or Monday morning, first thing, thinking about, where are you at right now from a revenue attainment, all that good stuff. What is the sales work you need to do? What is the practice you need to do? And when I say practice, record yourself, right? And think about if you are in that sales motion and you're going to talk to folks, maybe your sales cycle is a little bit longer versus a shorter sales cycle. Practice, 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 practice. I still to this day practice, right? And so I throw up on my phone and I do a video recording and I'll listen to it a few times, because the first time you do it, you think it's awful. The second time you do it, you're like, oh, it wasn't so bad. And the third time you do it, you're like, okay, I know what to fix. So just make sure, it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Well, or get somebody who's impartial and whose opinion you appreciate to help you. Sometimes it's your demeanor. I was at a client's practice for a presentation of the day, and he had such great content, but his demeanor, his whole affect was too low to get people excited and interested. And he didn't see it, because that's how he always is. Sometimes you need people on the outside.
Yep. Yep. That's a really great point, Deborah. Get with a buddy, right? And not your mom, because your mom will tell you you're amazing. My mom
So will
tells
your
me all
husband.
the time. So like Deborah.
So will your husband.
Absolutely, right? Like you got to find somebody who's going to tell you the truth, and you've got to be willing to hear it. So
Ask someone in your peer group. I know we have lots of members.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So with that, one of the things we always share with folks is there's a really great resource out there called the Sales Journal. So I think it's the salesjournal.co. For those of you that need the journal and want to write things down, this is an excellent resource. It's not that expensive. Or you could just take a look at this page and copy it yourself, right? I had a rep and he was amazingly successful and successful to this day. He literally still has a sticky note on his desk where he just counts his calls. So you're seeing that in the bottom right there every day. Because again, once we know, and you don't need a CRM system for this, how many calls does it take? What am I doing? Right? For the mobile nail salon, book. Once you dial in that process, right? People want to book with you and you go, do more of it, do more of what works. Right? So part of creating a scalable sales process is finding what works. Take the 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes to set up pieces of it. You don't have to do the whole thing. Start small, because again, you're after your routine. Your routine will turn into a rhythm, which will save you, right? So pick out your time blocks. Whenever you have a lot of energy, do whatever is going to require the most energy for you, right? Making sure you've got clear to-do items. So anybody ever put something on their calendar like, hey, prospecting, and then you go to open that calendar and you're like, there's nothing there and you don't know what to do? Yep, do that all the time. Be specific. So it's so embarrassing, right? And then stick to your plan. Do it. People want to hear from you. And so that's where I say, when we're talking about setting up our day, is making it easy for people, start with your friendlies, and then go from there, because now you have power and you've got an example. So being able to say, hey, I was just on a call with so-and-so up the street. You may or may not know them, but they said this. Is that the same for you? So the more we talk with people, the more we have authentic stories that give ourselves and our product and our service credibility. And the right activity brings the right result. So just do it, like Nike says. That's amazing that they coined that phrase. So when we think about time blocking, what you're looking at is an example of a rep, basically. And sometimes we have to play the role of a rep in our business. So from left to right, you've got Monday, right? And in this case, prep for the day, follow up from the previous day. You might have a team meeting of some sort. And even if you're an army of one, schedule time with yourself. For a lot of the people in our group that we coach, we call it our CEO hour. Have your CEO hour. Sometimes you might need more than one.
So Dionne, if this is for a rep who does nothing but sell, which,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I could never do that. Most of us have a thing we do, right? Claudia makes quilts and Phil
Yep.
sells apps and Sandra does coaching.
Yep.
What's a reasonable amount of time over the course of a week to be doing your sales while you're working your work?
Yep, absolutely. I would say give yourself anywhere between 3 and 4 hours a day for sales.
Wow. So a third of
If you're
my
just
day.
starting. Yeah.
But let's say you're going, right? You're a consultant and you have some gigs.
Yeah.
Can I spend 3 hours a week? Is that enough?
I think it depends on your goals, right? I think it depends on your goals. And I think it depends on the system you create for yourself. So if you're looking to grow, maybe. So I think the amount of time you spent on sales is a reflection of where you want to go and the system you have in place. Because
Okay.
if the system you have in place is all manual right now, it's going to take longer versus if you're using technology or you've got templates or whatever the case may be. So it's kind of a it depends answer, which is not always fantastic. But for those of you that are starting, you might need more from a sales time perspective. For those of you that are already going, I would say the question I would ask back is what you're doing now and how much time you're giving sales now working for you,
Good answer. Mhm.
right? And so even on this calendar, you could say, I might block off an hour and a half. Maybe I just do an hour and a half of on Monday, I might send out my emails. On Tuesday, I block off an hour or 2 hours for sales calls if I need to, or sales follow-up, right? For those of you that are maybe in that B2C space, it might be that personal touch that you send. And again, you can templatize some of that. So thinking about your rhythm, your sales motion, and then your buyer journey, and plot out your time accordingly. And align that with when you have the highest energy, quite frankly. I can't make phone calls between 1 and 3. My energy is so low, Deborah, to your point, it's awful. So I'm good in the morning, I'm good at the end of the day, and that middle is when I work on all the stuff that doesn't require me to be in front of somebody because it's not going to be my best. So thinking about your revenue goals, I'm sure everybody has some. This is super simple, kind of an ugly slide. But what is your goal for the month? And then how are you going to get there? Because to Deborah's point, that will help you determine how much time you spend where. Does that make sense for everybody? Cool. So again, just a goal setting guide, right? We talked about activity gives us the visibility, which gives us the opportunity. So how visible are you?
Claudia is asking a pretty good question in the
Yeah.
chat. Are emails the most convenient, friendly way to connect to potential clients? Cold calling even familiar clients seems intrusive, she says.
Oh man. It used to be. Claudia, what do you do?
She makes the quilts.
Oh, I love that. Um, yes and no. So there are new email rules out. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but the new email rules and are very tricky. Number one, people get probably 300 to 500 emails a day. So are you talking about, I love that. Okay. Um, it's not intrusive. You'd be surprised how much people want to hear from you. Right. So I think people are really busy these days. We're kind of all inundated. It's coming from every angle. And we want to help people. Right. So emails are may or may not be the most convenient. It depends on your demographic. It depends on your sales cycle. I would ask people. That's why we created a private Facebook group. Maybe your folks want a private Facebook group and you post in there, every other day. Instead of sending emails, you would post in there. So I know that's not a good answer. I would say if emails are working for you to get people to where you want them to be, fantastic. If it's not, I would use it. I am always a fan of emails, LinkedIn or Facebook. Go to where your people are and how they respond.
Okay.
Yeah, with scripts, use your voice.
Could I add a question?
Sure, Phil.
Just one thing I think a lot of us all face is the idea that like we don't always have all that time, like the 3 to 4 hours a day was like, it makes sense, but it's also like, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going to get that from.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know, like, how do you pick and choose the channels, right? Like you mentioned Facebook group versus like emails versus cold calling versus stuff like, is there a way you recommend, founders and small businesses to like pick and choose areas to build?
Yeah. Yes. So wherever your buyers are at, right? And so we've got two pieces to our business. We offer coaching and we offer consulting. Our consulting clients are on LinkedIn. Our coaching clients are on Facebook. So going to where your eyeballs are, your buyer's eyeballs are, is always the best place to start with that. And then I know we're talking about sales activity, but sales activity is also reaching out to people, right? And so, so Claudia, you were asking about how can we build better relationships with scripts. So thinking about our sales motion, anytime we're interacting with a potential buyer or customer is a sales motion. So when I say, 3 to 4 hours, I don't want people to freak out. That might be not only calls, but that might also be your written interaction with them. And so that's why setting up that system to copy and paste your answers is so important. Because Claudia is asking still, like, how can we build better relationships with scripts? If people don't know who you are, if we're starting cold, it takes 3 to 4 times, and we have to be consistent before they recognize our name and they know what we're doing. And so the question of, how do we know where to go is really about testing and measuring. So I would say, where are your buyers? What's your process to warm them up and or get them to where you want them to be? And then do more of that. Does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also it sort of begs the question, you need to be tracking everything that you're doing so you know what works and it's not just going by your gut.
Absolutely. And start small with that, right? So I'm not saying go and, find 100 people and do this, because it's not scalable for any of us, right? I'm a small business too. I'm an army of one. So I go maybe 5 at a time, right? And just kind of go from there. Because we can't boil the ocean. We'll drown.
Good. You want to bring us home here? It's 9:26.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the rinse and repeat, right? So finding that rhythm for yourself. Sales activity, again, isn't about FaceTime. It's not necessarily about, oh, I'm on sales calls or whatever the case may be. It's about finding a rhythm for yourself, right? So start small, start with a few, identify how your buyers are going to buy from you and do more of that. Because we're also not here to do business with everybody. I don't know anybody else, but man alive, I've had a few clients who are like, yeah, no, we should not be working together because this isn't going well.
Well,
And
and
that's what we do.
the other thing that I think you brought up before, and we haven't really gone into it, is once someone says yes, there actually needs to be a process after that too, right?
Yes.
Because you still need to deliver whatever it is and stay in touch with them and make sure that your sales and service and hopefully sell more to them because wow, that's easier than getting a new client.
100%. So in one of the slides, we talked about referrals and partnerships and stuff, especially for us in small business, right? And the lady who's doing quilts or the lady who's doing nails, like your customer base is going to be your gold mine. And so when we talk about setting up a sales process, thinking about, and this is where numbers are a little arbitrary, but if you say my goal is to have, and it maybe already do, like 25 clients. Once I get to 25, I want to shift my efforts from net new clients to referral business. Fantastic. Now you can start thinking about how do you do referrals, right? And there's a whole methodology and there's a ton of great content out there. I'm sure you guys probably are talking about that. But from a revenue perspective, we want to think about it from that strategic level. Right? It's not always about a heavy lift. And if we put if we put that prize for ours at the end of the day, it makes the cold calling or the cold outreach that much easier, where you're like, I just need 20 people. And because once I have 20, I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to do referral. And you go from building to maintaining, which is fantastic. Right?
But still work. It's not nothing.
It's still work. It's still work. It's just different work. But now you have friendly people to talk to.
As
Right?
Claudia says, the fifth connection is much better than the first.
Always. It's like dating, right? The first time you go out, you're like, oh, this is great and everything's wonderful. And your shoulders are in your ears and your voice has gone up 8 octaves. And the fifth date is totally different, right? So thinking about it from that perspective is just start. You got to start. And then, Deborah, what you said is really important too. Making decisions from our future state. Meaning, manifest the success you want. I don't mean to get all transcendental, right? That's not the thing. But if you are sitting there and we have so much power in our mind that if you are going to make a phone call and you go, yeah, this person's going to say yes, and I am ready to go. Because when we have that process documented, and even if it's on a scrap of paper, right? It doesn't have to be hard and heavy and formal. We feel confident. So if I call Deborah and I say, Deborah, I know you're a new entrepreneur. I just saw on LinkedIn, you got a round of funding. We actually help companies go from founder-led sales to building a sales team. Are you ready to talk? Are you ready to learn more? And she says, yes. I want to know what I'm going to say. That is fantastic, Deborah. I also saw on LinkedIn that you're on the East Coast. I've got some great friends there. I'll be happy to make those connections. In the meantime, here are the 3 things that are going to happen next. I'm going to send you a link to my calendar. I'm going to send you our free ebook, and I'm going to send you some information for you to consume. Let's go ahead and schedule some time right now. Did you get that email? Great. We're booked for next Thursday. I look forward to talking with you soon.
Yep.
That's all you have to do. You're not making the sale. So sometimes when we think about selling, we're thinking like, oh, I got to do everything in one fell swoop. Nope. You make a connection.
Making it bite-sized feels easier for you and easier for them.
100%. All we're doing is having a conversation. And quite frankly, I don't know if I want you as a customer because you might be kind of difficult.
Who, me?
Not you, the general you, right? And so in our head, if we think, man alive, there's 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion. Start with the step 1.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got a bunch of things for yourself. I always am a huge fan. We do a lot of workshops with people. So getting out the training workbook, which is the slides that you all have. You're going to get the annual plan as well. List out your negotiables and non-negotiables. Again, your sales process isn't 4 hours a day of being on the phone. You're not a BDR, but it might be 3 hours a day of maybe a mix of phone calls, marketing activities, and follow-up, right? So get from there, because if you are looking to scale and hire somebody, doing that activity will help you with that. Making sure you're assigning time to each activity so we know how much to assign for ourselves. Plot out your calendar. What does success look like? And then to Deborah's point, get an accountability partner. It will save both of you, right? Because once you declare something, it's really hard to go back without feeling sheepish. All right, Deborah, I don't know how much time we
Yeah,
have.
no, those are all in their handouts, which they all got, and
Yep.
I'll resend as well. I think you can stop sharing. This is absolutely fantastic. Are there any final questions? We're already over time, but I didn't want to leave anyone hanging.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. The fact that everyone stuck with us the whole time is a great testament to you, Dionne. We all took this time out of our Fridays. I'll send you all the follow-ups. I also am going to reinforce, I hope the many members who are on here will join us for speed networking, as well as next month's, well, there's an emotional intelligence webinar, and there's one on content creation. Dionne, thank you for waking up so early and disrupting your household schedule for us. And
Thanks for sticking with us.
We'll see you all next month. Bye-bye.
Yep.